Hello everyone and welcome to episode 38 of the YarnderWoman podcast. My name is Melinda. I am known as YarnderWoman on Instagram and Ravelry, and we have a wonderful Ravelry group called the YarnderWoman podcast, so please come and join us there. Today is Wednesday the 24th of February 2016, and as always I'm coming to you from Perth in Western Australia. It is currently, while I'm filming this, just gone 4:30am. I wasn't sure when else I was going to get time to film, so I set my alarm an hour early, so yeah, the alarm goes off at 5. It's dependent on how many snoozes I do before I actually get up. 5:30. But today it was quite easy to get up. Maybe I need to do this podcasting in the morning more often, because the alarm went off, and while I wouldn't say I was as fresh as a daisy at that point, I wasn't too worried about getting up, because I knew I was going to come and spend some time with all of you. So welcome, thank you very much. I hope you've had a great couple of weeks. It's about 10 days since I recorded, but I'm not sure when I'll get this out. I've had some illness last week. I had a tummy bug, which was just lovely. But I'm okay now, which is good, and I was very fortunately okay to do all the social activities that I had planned on the weekend just gone, which I'll tell you about in Spinning Me Right Round. Now, as it is 4:30am, I am going to need coffee, and possibly more than one. So I will show you my lovely mug. Some of you may have seen this on Instagram previously, because it does feature quite frequently. So we have Winnie the Pooh, Eeyore, Tigger and Piglet. Some lovely blossom trees here. And the story of this one, if you're familiar with Winnie the Pooh stories, he climbs into a hole to eat a whole lot of honey, eats too much honey, and can't get out. And so his friends are all helping pull him out. On the back it says, "How long does getting thin take?" Pooh asked anxiously. Or asked Pooh anxiously. It's backwards as I'm reading it, but I think I did pretty good. So I'm enjoying a single origin from Indonesia this morning. This is from Lonsdale Street Roasters. That's a coffee shop in Canberra that I've picked this up when I've been over there for work. If you ever get a chance, it's a great coffee shop. And they do a lot of these big bags. So if you ever get a chance to try Indonesian coffee, I highly recommend it. I also really like Colombian beans. And this I ended up trying because one visit I was there, they were out of Colombian, and the barista recommended Indonesian as a good substitute. And I think they're quite different. I guess they're similar, but if you get a chance, I recommend trying Indonesian single origin. So with a few more sips of coffee, let's get on with the show. So I'm broaching the subject today. We have a Picosaurus Rex. These, as in the brooch and the earrings, were part of an order I made from the company Erstwilder, who are a Melbourne-based design and brooch company, essentially. They do necklaces and earrings as well, but it's mostly brooches, so match made in heaven. So, as I said, this is the Picosaurus Rex design. I'll leave that up there for you to have a little read. And I also bought the matching prehistoric drops. And it's keeping herbivores happy. It's keeping this herbivore happy. The lids that I'm showing you are off these cute little boxes that the items come in, which are just lovely. And this is the card. So it's erstwilder.com. And I think this is great. They wrote a little personal message. Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. Oscar Wilde. Stay quirky. I thought it was really lovely. So I did get several other items in my purchase. I think I've shown one on Instagram before. It's a red sheep with black polka dots. I mean, come on, how perfect can you get? But these were part of their fairly recent dinosaur release. So if you're interested in such things, I definitely recommend you going over. They're made with laser cut acrylic, these fantastic colours. And I highly recommend them. And of course, dinosaurs have a special meaning because my niece and nephew really like them, especially my nephew Liam. So that's always a bit more special as well as being incredibly cute. I have two finished objects and one is quite a surprise, so I'll get to that in a moment. First up, we have a handbrake cowl. So I showed you this, I believe I had just done perhaps this garter part here. And last week I showed you I was using two long circulars to knit in the similar fashion that I do socks. And this is on 4.5mm needles. But then I realised that with the circumference of this cowl, I could actually just use one needle and it would be long enough. So I did that and it made it a lot easier. So I was very glad I worked that out. Now, this, you can see, I did a very loose cast on and it's quite floppy in comparison to the bind off. So if you can see there, sorry, the colour is being washed out terribly, but this is a much neater edge than down the bottom. And that's right, to make it loose, it's a bit silly. The reason I thought I needed it really loose is because I thought it was quite fitted, but it's not. You know, a person's head can more than easily fit through there, I think, most people's heads. And if someone's can't, well then they'd be grateful for this loose cast on. So I think I actually cast on holding both the 4.5mm needle plus I think maybe a 2.5mm together, which is why it's got quite a big gap here. Now, I don't think it's going to matter. I sort of look at it and go, yeah, it sort of bothers me, but it doesn't bother me enough. And this is actually a gift, so that's why I'm giving it extra thought. You know, am I proud enough of this? Do I think the recipient will mind? And the answers are yes and no, as in, yes, I am proud of it. No, I don't think the recipient will mind. So this is going to my sister-in-law's father. He and her mother are visiting at the moment and I wanted to knit them both something before they go back to Japan. Sorry, Pegasaurus, it's having a little lie down. He knows what time of the morning it is. But I think he's going to be more than happy. I don't think he's fussy in worrying about such things. And he does a lot of work outside. He's a carpenter. So when I was talking to my sister-in-law about what might be something that he would use, she said something to go around his neck and the top of his chest would be perfect. So I don't think he's going to mind in the slightest. And perhaps the airiness will catch some more air and make it a bit more warm for him, a bit warmer for him. So this is the pattern up close. Now, as I go up close, sorry, the colour washes out. But you can sort of see readiness, reds and whatnot. So this yarn, let me just get the tag for you, is Knit Picks Swish Worsted in the Lava Heather colourway. So this is all I have left of the first skein, and that's the second skein. So let me see if I can get it to show the colours for you. You can see here it's sort of made up of some red and blue and some really, really dark brownish colour, but all the colours work together. I think lava is a perfect descriptor actually. And as I said, I had used two skeins, so I did actually blend towards the middle, even though it's commercial dye and the same dye lot. I thought better to do that, and yeah, you can't tell in the slightest. There we go, sort of that colour. So up close you can see the reds and little bits of blue, but overall it gives you that lovely lava colour effect, I think. So the pattern is the Handbrake Cowl. That's written by Kay and Dan of the Bakery Bears. It was previously for £1 and all that money went to cancer research, but they've now recently made it a free pattern. So if you haven't already got it, go online and grab it. And it's really simple, very intuitive. After, you know, going through one repeat, or not even one full repeat of the pattern, I found that I was able to remember where I was by reading my knitting. So Highly recommend it. Very easy. I think it makes a great gift because it is quite simple and it's not something that requires sizing, and it's quite unisex as well. So that's my first finished object, and that's living in my Batman bag that was made just for me by Yvonne, who is Ganesh, and has a store on Etsy that I will link to. And it's got pockets, awesome Batman fabric. I love it. My second finished object is about sewing. Yes, sewing. So, back in January, I was going to make a skirt for my niece for her birthday, and I wasn't able to do that in time, and I was always still planning to do it. And a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to my niece on the phone, and she says, "Auntie Minda, where's that thing you're making me?" Because I haven't told her it's a skirt or that it's even sewing. And I said, "Oh, well, I haven't been able to make it yet." She said, "I'm bored with waiting." To which I said, "Well, perhaps you should consider yourself lucky that Auntie Minda is making you anything at all." She goes, "Yeah, but I'm bored with waiting." It's tough being 8, I tell you, especially when your auntie spoils you. So I was going to do some sewing with Mum last week, but then I was ill. So she just said I could borrow her sewing machine and I could, just give it back whenever. So when I was feeling better, I was able to get some sewing done. Here's the skirt. Isn't it cute? If I do say so myself. I just love it. This fabric, the cherry blossoms. So I've mentioned before, my sister-in-law is Japanese, so Emma was born in Japan and lived the first few years of her life there. And I just think this fabric is beautiful. Hold it up a bit closer because there's actually gold print on here. It's not really showing, but that's a little bit shiny. Oh, there you go. You can sort of see it's a little bit shiny. So I used an online free tutorial for that one on the whipstitch.com website. I'll put a link to the specific page. I think it was called 20-minute skirt tutorial. Now this took me a little bit longer than 20 minutes, and the post says that. It says, if you're not an experienced sewist, it's going to take longer than 20 minutes, but the more you make, the quicker you'll get each time. So I completely agree with that. I think altogether, maybe an hour and a half, but that was with me figuring out the sewing machine, which took up most of the time. The actual sewing, I don't tell you what breakdown of that it was, but yeah, very quick, and I can definitely see now that I've done it once, I can go, oh, right. So it's been probably about 20 years or so since I used a sewing machine. My mum used to make most of my clothes when I was growing up. She's a very talented sewist, as is my auntie Fran, who's also been on the podcast. So I've got a lot of tips from both of them as years have gone through in my life. So I always saw Mum sewing a lot, so I picked up a lot of things from her. In year 8, first year of high school, everyone had to do all the options subjects, ones you could choose, and we did sewing as part of that. So I learnt, I think, a lot about sewing machines during that time. When I was a teacher and I was working up in Carnarvon, which is about 10 hours drive north of Perth, there was a school production and I was in charge of costuming. I didn't actually sew many of the costumes, but I was in charge of, not art directing, but, coordinating the costumes. But it was the play or the musical Joseph's Technicolor Dreamcoat. So my mum actually made the Technicolor Dreamcoat and I helped her out with that. What we did was we bought lots of, I'm not sure what it was made of, but satiny, shiny type of fabric in all the rainbow colours, and she cut strips about so wide, and then we sewed all of those together to essentially make a giant piece of fabric, and from that she cut it out to make the coat shape, and then we had gold lame essentially lining. It was fabulous. It just looked wonderful. The colours just picked up and shone on the stage lights. It was just amazing. So I helped with, I think, sewing all the strips together because that was just straight sewing. And then I think other than perhaps, as I mentioned, my auntie helping me, I think I used her sewing machine to hem some jeans. So I think, yeah, it's probably been about 20 years and about 25 since I made a garment, because I made some little shorts in home economics sewing class, which I don't think I ever wore because they were incredibly unflattering. But yes, now I'm back to sewing. My point being of all of that, you've just got a little brief history of my sewing experience. It was actually a bit like riding a bike. When I got the sewing machine out, things started coming back to me. So I did use YouTube to look up a few things, such as how to wind cotton onto the bobbin, which is for those who are not aware, and goodness, I am certainly no expert, but I'll try and explain. You've got the cotton that comes down in your needle, and then you've got the bobbin underneath, so you have two threads get sewn at once. So I had to look up how to do that, and then how to get that bottom cotton to come up the little hole. So other than that, I managed to figure it out. Now there's a lot of fancy schmancy things on Mum's sewing machine that I wouldn't have a clue how to do, like for example, change the stitch type. I was just doing straight stitches. That's very descriptive, isn't it? Yeah, stitches. That's what we'll call them from now on, okay? But the internet is a great thing. I think when Mum first got the sewing machine, it obviously came with a manual, but I think she'd brought it to my brother's house, so I didn't have the manual with her. And we were able to look up the manual online, which was just so handy. Thank you, internet. So yes, I'm looking forward to having a bit more of a play with the machine. And so I'll show you what I made. So before I got to the skirt, I thought I'd do a practice piece. So what I did was, this skirt is made of 2 panels of fabric. You can see there's a seam on that side and on the other side. So I cut my 2 panels, and then there was about, this much left in terms of the width. So I thought I will use that for my practice. So I made a little pouch, just a pouch, doesn't have any closure. I guess what I could do is use this to practice putting a zip in and make a little pencil case or something. However, I've already hemmed it, so not having put a zip in, I don't know if that will be a problem. But anyway, regardless, I made this little pouch. Now, you can see there's my hems inside. I'll flip it inside out for you. And I used the hemming technique from the skirt tutorial to do this, because I was doing a full practice. So I've got my hems and I've pressed them down with the iron. So this is just a fold in the fabric, so I essentially just folded it up and hemmed the sides. Goodness, that's washed out, hasn't it? There we go. And then I really like the hem it tells you to do. You fold down the top and then iron it. Then you fold it again, which gives you this lovely edge. So you can see there's no roughness there. So I was sewing this inside out, and I just had put my red cotton in the top, and I just, because it's a practice, just left the cotton that was in the bobbin, which happened to be white. So I'm sewing along, going, oh, that red looks lovely. Then I turn it inside out, and I realise, because I've been sewing it inside out, as you usually do, my bobbin thread is the one that's visible on the outside, which is white. So really doesn't matter. That's what the whole point of a practice piece is, isn't it? So through that slight error, I have very much burnt into my mind that your bobbin thread will be the one that shows on the outside, so make sure it's the right colour. So yeah, it doesn't matter. And it's not like there's no white in the fabric print anyway. Thus far, I've actually used this already. I went to the Perth Writers Festival on the weekend, which I'll tell you more about later. And I had tickets for several events, so I put them in here and just folded it up, had it in my bag. It was much nicer than a plain envelope or something. So that was that. So once I'd done that, I was very excited, and I started sewing. And as I said, it didn't take me very long at all. Now, because it's a free tutorial, I can tell you sort of the steps. So you have your 2 pieces, you hem them together Yeah, so I've got my hem there. You do your bottom hem, so again it's that fold and then fold again. Lovely edge. And then it's just elastic in the top. So you put the elastic to the width of the child's waist. I'd already measured Emma. And then you make your pocket, so essentially sewing another hem and leaving some at the side. And then it recommends you stitch on the elastic on both sides of the hem so that it doesn't move around or twist. This isn't perfect at all, but I think Emma is going to love it because Auntie Minda made it and she'll love the fabric. Even though, as you'll recall a few episodes ago, I said that she told me that, you know, her colours now are blue and purple and those sorts of things, not into pink, but I think she's going to love this because I actually did show her this little pouch and she really liked it. So what makes it not perfect? Sewing machines have a little feature where you push a little lever and it sews backwards. So when you get to the end of something, you get to the end, sew backwards a bit, come forward again. It just gives it that finish so that you don't just have, you know, an open risk at the end of your work. So on the inside, it's okay. You're supposed to just sew over the same place, but you know, my work just moved. It's okay. On the outside, it's less okay. But again, it's not, you know, this side isn't too bad, but on the hem part, but you can see this is where I closed the hole. Maybe you can see better on that side. Where I closed the hole in this little pocket, so I thread the elastic in through here. And you can see my double back stitching is very messy there. But again, who cares, you know. It's functional, it is going to hold together. Emma is not going to be holding it up going, seems Auntie Minda. And if she does, I'll be having a polite word to her about being grateful for presents. But I don't think she would do that at all. She's not that sort of girl. And she's not going to care. She's going to wear it and love it, and it's going to be awesome. So, you know, that doesn't mean I won't take care to not do that again. You know, I will use this as a learning opportunity. But my point is, it doesn't bother me enough, nor is it noticeable enough. I think perhaps if, for example, it was, you know, a white fabric and I'd used red as a feature and it did that, that would bother me because it's supposed to be a feature and therefore it's not doing what what the intention is. But in this case, it's fine. So I loved this. I think it's going to be a project I'll make again because it was so quick and easy. And I definitely want to get some more sewing happening. I'll show you in acquisitions. I may have been making some purchases to prepare for some future sewing. I've only got one work in progress to show you. I have done a little bit of work on my blanket, but I think because I was sick last week, so I didn't go to work for several days, you know, I didn't have my before work do a blanket queue, and I'm still working on that big square that's 4 times the size of the others, so I won't get it out to show you because it's just made a little bit of progress. But I am participating in the cowl being run by the A Wee Bit Nitty podcast, Lena, and that's called A Wee Bit Blankie cowl, which I think is very cute. So just participate in that. You can do work on any kind of blanket, you don't have to finish it. So I'll definitely be taking another snap to put in the thread there. So the project I have been working on is a knit night shawl. If you're a long-time viewer of the podcast, you'll know I've made probably about 7 knit night shawls before now, because it's my go-to project for, it's a very good pattern for gifts, and more specifically why I chose it for this particular time, it's garter stitch with some increases. So it's very easy to just knit on when you're doing something else, and I've been out and about a lot this weekend, so it was a great project to take with me. So this is it here. It's much longer than the needles it's on, but isn't that pretty? So this yarn, and I haven't got the tag, I just had a look in the bag, but it is Gnome Acres yarn, in the Sparkle Gnome Base, fingering weight, in the colourway There's No Place Like Gnome, as well as being beautiful yarn. It's a Wizard of Oz reference. I love the Wizard of Oz, so how could I resist? This has been in my stash since last year, I think. So it's not too old stash, but yeah. So I just think this is beautiful. This is for a friend of mine. I asked her if she would like a knitted something, and she said yes. And, oh, can you see the sparkle? It's shining, yeah. And I think she's going to love it. I really love it, and I was like, oh, I wish I could keep it, but I think it is going to suit her colour scheme in terms of her wardrobe very, very well. And I am also very glad to be making it for her. So as you can see, it's narrow and then it gets wider as it gets closer to the middle. And so it's quite long widthways already, and I think it will block out even bigger, so that's lovely. So that's the widest part there, and then we start decreasing down to the sides again. This is living in, I think, a very appropriate bag. It's a Wizard of Oz bag from Little Skein and the Big Wool. And I think that's a very good matching of bag and yarn, if I do say so myself. So because of that Wizard of Oz link, this is going to be an entry in the Actually Knitting Broadway knit-along, because Wizard of Oz, obviously a stage play or musical, as well as the movie, and of course originally the book. So I'm entering it in that cowl, as well as the Twisted Stitches Rainbows and Unicorns knit-along. Also the This Old Knit and Love Sock Wool Gnome Acres knit along, which I wasn't sure I was going to get anything entered into because that was running January, February, and I only started this last week. But because I took it as my knitting while busy project, I got a lot of work done on it last weekend, and I'm only a few rows to bind off, which sounds quick, but it's not going to be because the rows are quite long, not as long as the doodler shawl. And then it's going to be a picot bind off because you can see the bottom edge is all picots. So I'm going to do the picot bind off. So there's lots of options in the shawl. You can do picot, no picot, beads, no beads. There's I think an eyelet row, but I'm not doing eyelets, but I am doing the picots, no beads either, because I don't think this yarn needs it. I think it looks lovely as it is. So this will definitely be a finished object next time I see you, because I imagine I am going to get it finished today. I've been taking it as my commute project the days I've been going to work since I started it. But the main work that got done on it was on the weekend just gone, and I'll tell you more about these events a little bit later. And I've also worked a little bit on the socks that I'm making my sister-in-law that I showed you last week, that are, the beginning is in Knit Picks Felici and then a plain Knit Picks Stroll foot. I haven't worked on those as much, but I do want to get both those socks and the shawl done before the end of February. This for the knit-alongs, but I mean that's by the by. But main reason is I've got some things I want to get on the needles for March. So coming up, there is going to be a Harry Potter knit-along, and that is on the amazing podcast Inside Number 23. That's hosted by the lovely Katie over in the UK. You may have heard of Katie and her podcast because she's been mentioned all over the place on other podcasts, and very rightly so. She's wonderful. It's a fantastic podcast. She just released episode 7, so I highly, highly recommend you go and check her out. That sounded a bit rude. Check out the podcast. And she's having, as I said, Harry Potter knit-along, so you can use any yarn or pattern that has a Harry Potter link. I'm planning to make either or and Hermione's Everyday Socks, which is a great free pattern by Erica Luda that I have knit before. So that's a possibility. The other one is an owl shawl, and I've gone blank what the shawl is called, but it's a crescent shape. You do a whole lot of garter, and then cables in the shape of owls, and then you can put their eyes on with beads. I've gone blank on what the pattern's called, but the lovely Nina, who is Ine of the This Old Knit podcast, who's one of the hosts of the No Makers Knit Along, she very kindly gifted me the pattern last year, so I've been waiting to use it, so this might be the time. And I was planning to perhaps make that as a gift for Mum, because she loves owls, and I think I've shown when we've done a little tour of her garden that she has a sign at her front door with owls on it, with the name of her house. But in any case, she loves owls. So, and I haven't got a knitted item prepared yet. I like to give her knitted things for each gift-giving occasion, usually Mother's Day, her birthday, and Christmas, and other times as well, but particularly for those occasions. And Mother's Day in Australia is coming up in May, so I think this might be a good chance to do that. So that's those plans. Marsha of the Fairy Little Twitch and Stitch podcast, who's also joined by Scylla, also fabulous podcast. I have mentioned them before because they've been running a little bit longer. Actually, they just had their first anniversary. Congratulations, ladies. Definitely go and watch them if you haven't already. But Marsha is a designer, and she's in the middle of, at the tail end, by the sounds of it, of developing her latest pattern, which is going to be free for everyone, and that is called the Narita Express. That's Narita. Narita is where the airport in Tokyo is located, so the Narita Express is the train that takes you there and back. And Marsha and her immediate family went to Japan last year, and that's where she, I think, got some inspiration, took the needles with her that she was using. So she mentions this in their latest episode, which I think is episode 25. It's the latest one from today's date anyway. And Marsha's going to be releasing that pattern free for everyone, as I said. And there's going to be a knit along in the Twitch and Stitch group for May for that pattern, and I'm really looking forward to doing that because it looks great. I've also got a toy that I need to make, or want to make, for my second cousin / niece. So it's my cousin's little girl who's 3.5, and they live in Japan, and I caught up with them just after Christmas. They were back visiting, and she, when she grows up, wants to be a redback spider. Don't we all? No, personally, but hey, whatever. And she's just fascinated by spiders, particularly redback spiders, which, if you're not familiar, they're quite an iconic spider that we have over here in Australia. They are poisonous, so they're not one to be playing with. You should play with any spiders because you don't know if they're poisonous, just leave them be. But it's black with a big red splotch on its back. So, hey, my colours, I'm happy. And when we caught up with them, I gave her a little cat toy that I'd made. It was Beans the cat. It was the one I made for the Down Cellar Studio PSP. I think it was the September interception. You had to make a little toy. And I made a Beans the cat, and I'd given that to her, and she loved it. And then I said, when I realised that she really liked spiders, I said, would you like me to knit you a spider? And she said, oh, yes, please. And during this party, I'll say I was knitting, I think it was Mum's tea party socks, the ones I gave her a few episodes ago in the Felicia yarn. So I had some knitting with me. And yeah, about half an hour after I asked her about the spider, she comes up and says, is the spider ready? I said, oh no, sweetheart, it's not going to be ready today. She goes, well, what's that in the bag? I said, oh, that's a sock. And even if it was the spider, it wouldn't be ready now. So sweet. So my aunt and uncle, so her grandparents, are going over to Japan in April, so I've got to make sure it's ready. I have a pattern all set. Now, I realise some people are slightly, from a slight to extreme, have arachnophobia or just not too keen on spiders. So when I do show it on the podcast, I'll give you a warning if you don't want to look, okay? But yes, so I want to get some things finished so I can get those things casted on. So we have 2 cowls going, as we've talked about. So the first one is Stripy Shawls / Colour Affection Shawl. That's running until the end of March. There are already some great finished objects in that thread. Also come and have a good chat over in the chatter thread because there'll be prizes from both. Thank you very much to the people who are sponsoring us for those prizes. We have the SciBooks Craft Room, Analog Bags, Mina Phillip, pattern designer, and Space Frog yarns. So do go and enter in or have a chat, come and join us. And we also have our year-long charity cowl, where I'll be drawing a prize each quarter, and the prize that will be drawn at the end of March was donated to us by Circus Tonic Hand-Dyed Yarns. Speaking of charities, I'd also like to remind you that probably the next time I record, I will have shaved all my hair off for the world's greatest shave. I'll show you here, so a bit of crinkling. I've ordered from the Leukemia Foundation store. That's the Australian charity that is running the world's greatest shave. This is a bandana, so you can wear it on your shaved head. I don't know that that's the look I'll be going for. I'm thinking more I'll wear it as a neckerchief or a little scarf. I've got this not only to further support the charity, but I'm planning to wear it at least for the first few days when I arrive at work with a shaved head, because I don't want to scare anyone and have them think I'm actually ill. And it's, just a good way of starting the conversation as well, and raising some further awareness of the charity. So thank you if you have already sponsored me. I appreciate each and every donation. It all counts. Don't worry about amounts. So I will definitely put the link in the show notes if you are interested and able. No problem at all if you're not. Thank you for all your support, emotional and financial. Acquisitions, I have been spoiled again. I am so lucky, and I am so grateful to everyone for your friendship, not just things that I'm going to show you today, but all of you for watching. For anyone who leaves comments on the Ravelry thread on Instagram, I always really appreciate it, so thank you. First up, last time I mentioned that I got some lovely yarn from Miss Click Clack, and that was sent to me by the wonderful Julia, who was 9Crafty11, as Valentine's Day present. That arrived the Friday before Valentine's Day. On the Monday after Valentine's Day, there was another parcel from Julia. She spoils me way too much. Thank you, Julia. You're lovely. And in this, it is so sweet. She knit me a bookmark heart. So it's a heart with this lovely plaited tail. And I've been using it in a book that I will show you very soon. But isn't that gorgeous? And she also made one for Mum. And on Mum's, she did some little embroidery, which is just lovely. Suited Mum so much. So that was gorgeous. There's also this beautiful tea that I didn't want to undo until I'd shown you, so I'm looking forward to drinking this later today. So it's a green tea blossom mix, and that includes green tea, jasmine, chamomile, lavender, rose petals, cinnamon and cornflowers. It sounds delicious, and it's just so cute. That's the lid there. Thank you, Julia. And I received another parcel. This was part of the Valentine's Day podcaster swap. That should be, I guess, podcaster Valentine's Day swap. We weren't swapping podcasters. But anyway, swap between podcasters. I was partnered up with the lovely Gabby, who is the host of the Once Upon a Corgi podcast. And she has an Etsy shop called Upon a Corgi. And I'm blown away by the swap package that I received from her. So this is a gorgeous card. And I think that's a lovely sentiment. And then she leapt with the gentlest of courage, faith and joy. And inside it says, printed from the card, "You were born to fly." But then it's also got writing to me that I won't show you. Beautiful card. This lovely bag of minis for my Cozy Memories blanket. I just want to show you this one in particular. It's a little teeny tiny little horse game with sparkles. But there's all sorts of lovely colours in there. That will go very nicely with my blanket. Those are in a cute little raccoon bag, and then with Once Upon a Corgi card and a little corgi stitch marker, progress keeper. How cute is he? Aww. This lovely heart-shaped tin of tea, and this one has, it's black tea called Love Tea number 7, or Thé d'Amour number 7. Sorry, Isabel of Fluffy Fibres, I have probably just butchered that French pronunciation, so my apologies. But anyway, moving on. So this one includes the ingredients: black tea, chocolate chips, rose petals, strawberries, vanilla. Yum. And Gabby said she particularly chose this one because I had mentioned that I love rose flavours, which I do. Thank you, Gabby. She so kindly sent me a skein of her own hand-dyed yarn. So again, that's the label there. This colourway is Heart of Gold on the ginger base, which is 75-25 superwash merino, nylon and gold stellina. I'll hold it back here. Look at those colours. This is a beautiful tonal red. I also really like, especially here, see there's like these splotches of really dark red in there. It's just gorgeous. So it's so soft. I've never been lucky enough to own or use any of Gabby's yarn before, so I'm really looking forward to casting this on. I haven't decided yet what it's going to be, but lovely. And now this, as if all that wasn't enough, this blew me away. She knitted me an anatomical heart. Isn't that so cool? It's amazing. And she says that that's in the same colourway. So, oh, blew out. There we go. So in the Heart of Gold colourway. So it's a very good name for it. But isn't that fabulous? No, stop blowing out. There we go. Yes, so that is going to take pride of place on my craft shelf somewhere here. Thank you, Gabby. Such a beautiful yarn package, or swap package. Love my little heart. And I should say there was also chocolate in the parcel, but that's moved on now. That's already been eaten. The last thing I have to show you is a book that I got at the Perth Writers Festival. So, Craft for the Soul. Can you guess why I might have wanted to buy it? So, this is by author Pip Lincoln. Now, Pip is an Australian crafter, blogger, author. So I was very excited to be able to see one of her sessions. And I was also even more excited to be able to get my book signed by her. Melinda, thank you for coming to my session and for sharing your knitting. Love, Pip. Because, yes, I got her to hold my knitting, and I was able to take a photo with her before she had to leave, and that was very cool because she was only able to stay for the book signing after her session for a very short time, and I was able to grab her, so that was wonderful. Now, you'll see the tail hanging out here. This is the bookmark that Julia gave me. Yay! So it's doing a very good job minding my place. Now, as you know, if you've watched the podcast before, I am much more into audiobooks lately, so this is the first physical book that I've read in ages. So the premise, I'll just read you what's on the back. How do you harness creativity and bring it into your everyday life? Crafter and blogger Pip Lincoln shares her lifetime wisdom on prioritizing your own creativity, doing new things, finding things that spark excitement and passion, being positive, creating routines, loving your work, and much, much more. This clever, cute, step-by-step guide will show you practical ways to get the most out of your creativity and the life that you want. Crafting along with Pip Lincoln is like hanging out with your best friend and stitching something cute while knocking back a nice cuppa and a bicky. And that is a quote from Jo Walker, the editor of Frankie magazine, which is a publication here in Australia that has a lot of quirky and fun things in it. So, and look, this doggy has pom-poms on. So yes, I really recommend this. As you can see, I'm only a little way in. Oh, nearly halfway when I look at it like that. But yeah, fabulous book. Really, really recommend it, and so cool that I was able to get it signed. So when I was talking about my sewing, I said I may have bought some things to help me with future sewing projects. I went a little bit nuts at the Spotlight, which is a big chain. It's not even just craft supplies, it's craft, but homewares, all that sort of thing. So Mum and I went a couple of times last week before, and Mum very kindly treated me because they had a big sale on a lot of fabrics. So one of my plans is to make a t-shirt for my little nephew. It's his 6th birthday coming up. I always have trouble knitting for him. Like I knitted him the rainbow socks recently, so socks are okay. Toys are good. You know, I've done him a snail and a dinosaur, but there's only so many toys you can have. But he runs really hot, so knitted clothing other than socks is just not going to get worn by him because in summer he's running around in t-shirts because he's just not cold. So I thought with my newfound sewing, not yet obsession, but I'm getting there. I thought I'd make him a t-shirt. So when I get to that, I'll show you the fabric for that then. I just bought some simple a knit fabric. On that topic, I can't find a lot of knit fabrics here in Perth. I found a few, but really nothing. It's all, sorry, I should say knit cottons. I found a lot of knit polyesters. Yeah, no. A, they're yucky to wear because you'd just be hot all the time because it doesn't breathe. And, you know, for a little boy who runs hot already, don't want that. Also, it's a yucky synthetic fibre that's not nice. So anyway, if anyone in Perth knows of anywhere I can get a bigger choice of knit fabrics, let me know. I've tried Spotlight and Textile Traders. Was Textile Traders where I ended up getting the print for him. It's sort of a navy with insets all over it. So I'll show you more of that when I actually start sewing. But the fabric I want to show you today, I got from fabric.com. And ahead of this website, I might have heard about it on other podcasts, but most recently, and what sent me over looking at what they had, was Katie from Inside Number 23 mentioned it. So the fabric she had shown was a Little Red Riding Hood fabric. Little Red Riding Hood's probably one of my favourite, if not my absolute favourite fairy tale. Unfortunately, they had run out of that, but while I was there, I found the brand Cotton and Steel, which I have heard before from lovely Jenny of Tiny Paper Foxes and lovely Kristen from Yarngasm podcast, Wool & Vine Yarns. And I remember when Jenny was showing some, she said that she'd heard there was going to be a Cat Lady range coming out. I found some Cat Lady range. Now, I'm not as big into cats as Jenny herself is. She has the lovely Colin, who's the third co-host of Tiny Paper Foxes. But, you know, I've got my Neko Atsume game obsession, which just tangentially, I've had to move that game from the front page on my phone. I had to move it to the second page because it was getting ridiculous. When I was off work and sick, I was just sort of like lying there going, feed the cats, feed the cat. It was just getting crazy. So I'm trying to reel it back a bit. Anyway, this is the fabric I got. So they're all 100% cotton. I'm just looking at them now. And I'm planning to make skirts. And I'm just, wasn't the word skirts, I had forgotten. The Ray skirt, that's a pattern that many podcasters have made. Lovely Isabel of Fluffy Fibres, Jenny from Tiny Paper Foxes, at least those two ladies. Oh, Claire from New Hampshire Knits, I think. But that looks relatively simple. So they're still in their plastic because they only literally arrived yesterday. And I'm just going to leave them in the plastic until I'm ready to use them. So this one, sorry, it's sort of a dark navy. I actually thought this was going to be black, but oh well. It's a dark navy with polka dots and then cat heads. So I've hold it back so you can see the colour better. So you can see we have lines of polka dots and lines where it's a polka dot alternated with a cat head. Very cute. As part of the Cat Lady range, they have yarn fabric. So this one, again, is navy, and again, I thought it was black, but never mind. So it's navy with, there we go, navy with sort of corally and pink coloured yarn balls. Very exciting. And because there was yarn fabric, I, couldn't just get one. So I got this lovely green with the sort of purpley and reddish colour. There we go. Very cute. And this one, I think this is a different range. This is not Cat Lady, but it is Cotton and Steel. And I think this is just great. This one is black. And it's bunnies. So I thought all of those will make some very lovely skirts. And I'd also really like to make my own t-shirts. Like this one is just a plain black t-shirt, just from a shop somewhere in Perth. I don't remember where I got it. I'd like to be able to make t-shirts and things like that. Just have more of my items handmade, as a lot of people are talking about these days. So I'm going to practice on the ones I'm making my nephew and then see how I go. I have found some more tutorials online that I'm going to be referencing for those. I have found a t-shirt that has a little Peter Pan collar. That looks exciting and I think that's going to be cool, but I'm not starting with that one. But yes, more on my sewing adventures as they happen, and I'll show you these fabrics more when I use them. Okay, this version of Melinda is now going to go and head off to work. So I'm going to send you on now to another version of Melinda, who's going to tell you what's been spinning me and her right round. Hello, I got my hair shaved. So this being the spinning me right round segment, I assume a lot of you might be spinning out right now. So it turns out I have a lot of grey hair that was underneath, but you know, I did think about getting it dyed. I went and got my hair shaved this morning at the hairdresser, and it's funny, the apprentice came and asked me what I wanted to have done, and I told her, and then my hairdresser came back and said, I think she's misunderstood. She said you're shaving your head. Yep. So I explained that it was for charity and the World's Greatest Shave cause. So I will definitely be putting a link to my sponsorship page in the show notes and also in the down bar here on YouTube. So if you have capacity, it would be wonderful to have you donate. All the money goes to the Leukemia Foundation, so for supporting research into leukemia, being blood cancer. But I'm also just doing it to raise awareness of cancer support in general. So yes, I highly recommend you donate if you are able to. So yes, as I said, I was thinking about dyeing my hair while I was there, but several thoughts went through my mind. One was, you know, just get used to the short hair first, don't worry about the colour. Then I thought, well, also, you know, why should I have to dye my hair? And if a gentleman has grey sides, we would call him distinguished. So as a woman, I shouldn't, you know, feel the pressure to have no grey hair. That doesn't mean if you choose to dye your hair, I have any issue with it whatsoever, and I may yet still dye mine. But to be honest, the main reason I chose not to dye it is because I hadn't brought my knitting with me, and I didn't want to be sitting in the hairdresser for up to an hour with nothing to do. So all in all, I think it's fine. It also opens up a whole lot of cosplay activities options for me. You know, there's Furiosa from Mad Max Fury Road. There's the character from V for Vendetta that Natalie Portman played. You know, choices are endless, really. But hair cutting aside, it's really cool. I keep looking in the mirror going, ooh. So it's going to take me a little while to get used to. Hair cutting aside, I've been doing lots of fun stuff lately. A couple of weeks ago, I went and saw a film recorded version of the stage play of Jane Eyre. A few months ago, I went and saw Hamlet filmed in this way, where it's filmed live at the National Theatre in London. So this is where the novel Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte has been adapted for the stage, and it was really cleverly done. There was a cast of perhaps 5 or 6 actors, and other than Jane, all the other actors rotated between parts and just changed maybe their headpiece or their costume. And they had a band on stage and a singer, so there was the music and the action binding together instead of, say, having an orchestra in the pit or something. And a lot of it was done using stagecraft, so sort of like interpretive dance, you know, actions and movements. When a character died, they would just walk slowly down and then open up a trapdoor on the stage. Really well done. So I'm not sure if that is going to be made available, but if it is, I highly recommend it. It was great. Also, if you're interested in listening to a version of Jane Eyre, the book, I highly recommend the Craftlit version, which is where I heard it from, the Craftlit podcast. That version of Jane Eyre was great, beautifully read, and the analysis and descriptions and discussion points from Heather Ordover, the podcast host, were really great. So check that out if you're interested. I went to a lecture at the Perth Observatory last weekend, and they had their summer lecture series, and it was done by, looking down at my notes, Luke Davies, who is an astronomer or astrophysicist, I believe, originally from Wales but now living here in Perth, and it was fabulous. It was just called The Cosmos, and it was a not too scientific take on the work that Luke Davies does, and it was fascinating. You know, obviously a lot of people there were already interested in the observatory or had a science background, but from a non-science researcher person, it was completely understandable. It was sort of done in layman's terms, but not dumbed down. It was still very interesting and informative, and I got him to hold my knitting. So it was the beginning of a people holding my knitting weekend, as I'll get to shortly. But he thought that was great, and I'll put links to all his personal social media as well as the projects he's working on, because he said part of what he loves to do is getting the message out there, showing people what he does, what there is to learn about the universe. There was a great photo he put up as part of his slide presentation, and it was a shot from the Hubble telescope, and it was just a little square of the photo, and it looked like there was a whole lot of stars, but what it turned out was those were universes. So we're part of the Milky Way universe, so if the Milky Way is this size where this, you can't even see a minuscule dot, this picture had hundreds of other universes. It was mind-blowing but fascinating. So I definitely recommend, if you're interested in any way about space, to check out the websites and Luke's social media presence. A lot of my photos on Instagram last weekend were from the Perth Writers Festival, so that was running the Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the Friday off work, but I organised to go to sessions on both the Saturday and the Sunday. It was so much fun. It was being held at the University of Western Australia, which is my old alma mater, and a lot of it was around the arts building, which is where a lot of my classes were, so it was very nicely nostalgic, but it's a beautiful grounds at UWA, so it was just great to be there anyway. So on the Saturday, the 4 sessions that I went to were all related to food. They were having a bit of a food theme for the festival this year, and they had a lot of cookbook authors and food writers and that sort of thing. The very first session I went to was called It's Common Sense, and it was 2 presenters speaking about eating healthily, just having common sense with what you're eating, eating ethically. One of the presenters of that session was Damon Gameau, who produced That Sugar film, which was done in a similar vein to Super Size Me. It was about highlighting sugar in foods. And in the movie, he eats what would be termed healthy food, in inverted commas. And it was highlighting how much sugar is hidden in products. So, for example, the very first breakfast he had was a bowl of, I think it was Just Right cereal with some low-fat yogurt and a glass of orange juice. Like shop-bought orange juice, not freshly made. Well, even freshly made would still have the same sugar content, but not whole fruit is what I mean. That had about 20 teaspoons of sugar in it. There's another scene in the film where instead of eating the food, he looks at how much sugar is in it and then eats that much sugar in the sugar cubes. So he gets a little, I think it was like a muesli bar, granola bar or muffin, or some sort of bar that you could buy. And it had, I think, 5 teaspoons of sugar. So what he did was get 2 water crackers and put 5 teaspoons of sugar in it, made a little sandwich, and then just bit into it. Ugh. And then I think there was a chicken teriyaki sauce. So he got a chicken leg and put 7 teaspoons of sugar on the chicken leg and ate that. And it was just highlighting that's exactly what's in those foods. So don't get me wrong, I don't mind sugar in moderation or in things deliberately. I don't like how much is hidden in things. So that was really fascinating to hear from him. He has got a book called That Sugar Book, which is a companion to the movie. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to buy it because I had booked all these sessions and they were pretty much one after the other with only about 20 minutes in between. But I was able to briefly meet him and I got him to hold my knitting, which is exciting. And I'll put links to his movie and to his social media presence so you can have a look. He's also got an app called That Sugar app. The branding is all very easy to remember. And you can do a little challenge where you enter what food you eat and it'll show you how much sugar is in it. Let me see if I can find, and I'll show you what I've done on the other days. I can't figure out how to work the app to get back to the other days, so rather than make you wait, I'll show you. That's for my day thus far. And you can see it gives you your sugar cubes and you can move them. And it's a little bit of reverse psychology because, you don't want to get lots of sugar, but it's fun when there's lots of sugar there because you can move them all around, but don't do that. So yes, if you're interested, I'll put all the links in the show notes. One of the other sessions I went to was called Comfort Food, and one of the presenters there was Diane Fresquez, and she wrote this book, A Taste of Molecules. And everyone who was on the stage was lovely, but found her particularly lovely in how she was speaking. She's American, but now lives in Belgium, I think she said. But we were actually in the very front row for that one. It wasn't assigned seating, you just sat where you wanted to sit. And I was taking my knitting with me the whole time. That was the knit night scarf that I showed you earlier. And I was just knitting, had it on my lap for all the sessions, which was, great fun. And at the end, because we were right there at the stage, it was very easy. I just sort of stood up and said, ladies, could I ask you to hold my knitting? I did this for all the sessions, but sometimes I was a few rows back and I had to, hurriedly get up there. And Diane said to me, I saw you knitting the whole time, so I know you were really listening. I said, exactly. That's, my mind works that way. If I'm, just doing the knitting on my lap, that keeps my brain engaged and it helps me listen. So turns out she's a knitter too. And I got the most cute photo of us together holding my knitting, which was great. And she actually asked me to send her the photos, so I've still got to do that, and I'll send her a link to this as well so that she knows I'm letting everyone else know. On the Sunday, Mum and I went on Saturday, and I also went with my colleague and one of her mums, which was lovely, daughter mummy day. On the Sunday it was just Mum and I, and there was a few hours in between our sessions. The first one we saw that day was about the Australian bush, the bush in inverted commas, and that was really interesting, sort of looking at, that was a bit more of a literary focus, I suppose, which was really interesting. So looking at the Australian outback and the bush and how it is represented in Australian literary and artistic culture, and what does it really mean for those of us who live in the city and that sort of thing. So that was really interesting. I got one of those speakers to hold my knitting, and he didn't really know why I was asking him that, so it's quite an amusing photo. Whereas everyone else who I asked, and I'm not saying he was rude at all, he just looked very bemused, as you'll see here. Whereas everyone else got really excited. They're like, I'd love to hold your knitting. This is the most exciting thing I've ever been asked. The last session we had, so for the few hours in between, my brother and my niece and nephew, Emma and Liam, were down because they had a lot of children's activities on the Sunday, so that was really lovely to catch up with them. And we had artisan-made icy poles by some of the food purveyors, so that was lovely. And then the last session Mum and I went to is where I saw Pip Lincoln speak. So she was the author of the Craft for the Soul book I showed you earlier. So it was herself, Pip, and Michelle Crawford, who is a cookbook writer who had moved from Sydney down to Tasmania. For those who aren't familiar, if you look at a map of Australia, there's the big landmass, and then at the bottom left there's an island state of Tasmania. And Mum actually bought Michelle's cookbook, and we got that signed by her at the end, which was lovely, and I got to hold my knitting. But the session they were doing was called hygge, which you'll have to excuse my pronunciation of the Danish word there. That's Hygge. That's a term that refers to coziness and cozy feelings. In fact, Helen from Curious Handmade, about 3 or 4 episodes ago, had an episode called hygge, where she was speaking with one of her friends about the concept. And that was really lovely. It was a great session, very chatty, and that wonderful feeling of crafting, cooking, all the things that can bring your own sense of coziness and hygge, spending time with friends. So it was a lovely session, and while we were waiting for it to start, Mum and I found our seats, and it was quite one of the smaller theatre auditoriums. So there was no spaces between us in terms of no gap seats. And the lady sitting to the other side of me, I had Mum on the other side, said, "Oh, that's wonderful, look at your knitting." And we were having a good talk about knitting. She said it was so lovely to see someone younger knitting, and that, isn't it a lost art? And I said, well, it's not so visible, but I said there is actually quite a big knitting community, especially online. And then she held up her hands and said, I wish I could knit. And she had massive swelling from arthritis, and it just pulled at my heart. And I said, oh, I've actually got arthritis, but fortunately, it was addressed and I had medication in time. She was an older lady. And she sort of said, medication doesn't work for me. And it broke my heart. But she said, oh, that's fantastic that you're knitting. That's the best thing to do. Keep your hands working. I said, it is. And I actually asked if she would like to hold my knitting for a photo, but she didn't want to. She said, oh, I'm not famous. No. But that was really lovely. It was a great start. And then, we also conversed at the end before we went our separate ways. So it was a lovely lovely little bit of extra hygge to the event. So with that, I will sign off. I hope you are having a wonderful day, whatever you are doing. Can I please gently remind you, if you have financial capacity, could you please put a donation into the fundraising page for the World's Greatest Shave? I've put the link down in the down bar, and it's also in the show notes. As I said, there is absolutely no pressure, and I appreciate everyone's emotional support as well as financial, but it is fabulous if you are able to contribute financially, because that's what it's all about. It was raising awareness, raising some money for research, because I think while leukemia and other cancers still take so many people, the research and how medicine has come along is what saves a lot of people's lives and will keeps them with us for longer. So if you have capacity, that would be fabulous. Regardless, have a wonderful day, enjoy the rest of your week, and happy crafting. Bye.